Quarters. All right. Good evening, everyone. Just before we begin, I want to thank our sponsors, the Hermels. The Hermel family sponsored to wish Jerry a very happy birthday. Jerry is, aside for a great husband, father, grandfather, an esteemed member of the Working Man Kollel, but he is my co-participant at day school drop-off when he's dropping off his granddaughter, who's in the same class as my daughter. We're usually there at around the same time. So happy birthday to Jerry, and wish you a long life, many, many more, with your continued harbatzas haTorah of increasing Torah learning for the Jewish people. Of course, also we are learning tonight L'zecher Nishmas Hagoner of David Feinstein, Zatzal, and Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sachs, Zechron Livracha, both tzaddikim who were influential beyond comprehension in their span of Klal Yisrael, and the loss of both of them, especially at the same time, is something that is quite tragic and very, very difficult. And our learning should be a zechus, not that they necessarily need our zechusim, but any Torah that we are learning, we know is a direct result of the efforts that they have done in their lives, and therefore it's only right for us to learn in their memory. So I also want to use the opportunity tonight. We're going to be talking about some of the debate that took place, the controversy that took place around the Mussar movement, and at the end I wanted to show a couple clips from both Rabbi David Feinstein's Levaya and from Rabbi Sachs himself, that really put into a proper framework the reason why the learning of Mussar we do today is something that's so critical. So the way the story goes is that Rabbi Yitzchak Blazer, who we know was the Rabbi Yitzchak Petersberger, was the star pupil of Rabbi Yisrael Salanter, was the pre-Yitzchak, a tremendous Talmid Chacham, and we know that he was one of the progenitors of the Masorah of Mussar. So he was, along with his other, you can call them co-chairs in this revolution of Mussar, the three major students of Rabbi Yisrael Salanter, himself, along with Rav Simcha Zissel Ziv, the Alter of Kelm, and Rav Naftali Amsterdam. So the three of them would go and try and incorporate Mussar into different communities, the study of Mussar into yeshivas, and they went to go pitch the idea to the Yeshiva Volozhin, the greatest yeshiva in the world. The yeshiva headed by, started by Reb Chaim Volozhin, or headed by Reb Chaim Soloveitchik and the Netziv, his wife's grandfather, and they approached Reb Chaim Soloveitchik to try and include Mussar into the curriculum of the yeshiva. Now, again, I want to just review the concept of studying Mussar for a moment. When we say studying Mussar, we don't mean trying to develop a sense of breadth and depth into writings in Jewish ethics. That's not what studying Mussar is. Studying Mussar is creating a study of your own person, creating a study into who I am and how I could be developing better as a person. That's what the study of Mussar is. So volumes of Mussar, you look in a Jewish library and you go to the Mussar section, what you'll find are a number of books that help a person study their character, like Mesilas Yesharim, Chovas Halavavos, volumes on Pirkei Avos, Pele Yoetz, the Rabbeinu Bechaya, a number of different Noam Elimelech, which is in Hasidus, the Tomer Devora, Yesod V'Shorish Havoda, Derech Hashem, a whole slew of, and getting down to the modern Sfarim like the Ale Shor by Revolbe, and you come, there's a whole, you have volumes and shelves and entire libraries just of these Mussar Sfarim, and the study of Mussar is not to just gain a breadth of that knowledge, but it's much more than that. It is also to have those farm help you attain a certain level of character development. So the way the story goes is that when Rabbi Yitzchak Blazer approached Reb Chaim Soloveitchik to include the study of Mussar in the Volozhin Yeshiva, so Reb Chaim didn't want to hear from it. Reb Chaim didn't want to include Mussar in the curriculum of Volozhin. So Rabbi Yitzchak Blazer said, well, it seems to be that the Gemara is in favor of the study of Mussar. How did he know? So he points to a Gemara in the beginning of Maseches Brachos. The Gemara says in Maseches Brachos on Daf Hey Amud Aleph, and this is what Rabbi Yitzchak Blazer says to Reb Chaim Soloveitchik. He says that the Gemara says that we're supposed to learn Mussar. How does he know? From the following: Amar of Levi Bar Chama, Amar Reish Lakish. La'olam yargiz adam yetzer tova yetzer hara, that a person is always supposed to have their yetzer tov, their positive, good inclination, fighting their negative inclination. Shena Amar, as the pasuk says, rigzu v'al, that a person is supposed to tremble and not sin. Basically, a person is supposed to take to court, up against their yetzer hara, their evil inclinations, and you're supposed to use their good inclination to do that, that positive side of them, the part of them that that pushes them towards doing the right thing. Continues the Gemara and it says, V'im nitzchu mutav. Now, if the Yetzer Hara wins, Yetzer Tov wins, great. V'im lav. What if the Yetzer Hara wins, meaning the Yetzer Tov lost? So what should one do then? Ya'asok b'Torah. A person should learn Torah. That would be the next step. Again, a person's fighting their Yetzer Hara. Their Yetzer Hara is telling them, go to Carl's Jr. and get a number 3. Go to Carl's Jr. and get a number 3. Okay? And the person saying, no, I am instead going to use my Yetzer Tov. I'm going to use my good, positive inclination. I'm going to try and say, no, I don't want to go do that. And I see I'm losing, so what should I do? Ya'asok b'Torah. Go learn Torah. Okay, good. Shena Amar, as the pasuk continues, that same pasuk, Imru b'levavchem, you should talk to your heart, meaning we know the Torah is the language of the heart, so one should go learn Torah if they are losing the battle against their Yetzer Hara. Im nitzchu mutav. So if the person wins, great, wonderful. The im lav. But what if the person's still losing? They're pulling into the drive-through section of Carl's Jr. Even though they have the Shul YouTube channel playing in their car, they're listening to Torah, they're using their Yetzer Tov to fight their Yetzer Hara, still nothing's working. So what's one supposed to do? V'im lav yikra kriya shema. A person should say the Shema. Stop and say the Shema. Why is that going to help? So saying the Shema is going to help. Why? Because we know that saying Shema is not just lip service to God. Saying Shema is making a commitment. It is saying that I'm accepting upon myself all Malchus Shamayim. I'm accepting upon myself the yoke of heaven. That acceptance, that commitment, that reaffirmment is supposed to remind me, I got to get out of the drive-through line. I can't get a number 3 from Carl's Jr. There's no chance that is the right thing for me, because I know in my heart of hearts that Hashem is in charge of the world, that I need to live a life by Torah.
Why didn't I give you a bigger bag?
As the pasuk said,
Bigger bag.
as the pasuk says, al mishkavchem, referring to your bed, meaning that that is where you say the Shema at night. Okay. So im nitzchu. So now if you win, meaning that if saying the Shema worked, So then mutav, great, you won. V'im lav, however, if not, meaning you have lost, so then what's one supposed to do? V'im lav yisker lo yom hamisa. One should remember the day of death. That's the Hail Mary. The Hail Mary of beating the Yetzer Hara is remembering the day of death. Shne'emar v'dom musala. Okay. Said Rabbi Yitzchak Blazer to Rabbi Chaim Soloveitchik, what does this mean? Yisker lo yom hamisa. What is Yisker lo yom hamisa? Remember the day of death. That you should remind yourself that you're going to die one day. What does that mean? So if you remember, the way that Rabbi Yisrael Salanter in the Or Yisrael, in the Igeres HaMussar, that letter of Mussar, remember where he printed in the magazines his essay where he was inviting everyone to join into the revolution of learning Mussar and why it was so important. And he said because a person does not recognize with each action that they do the consequences that it could bring. That eventually you are not going to be living anymore and you are going to have to face judgment. When that happens, you want to be prepared. You want to be able to approach God, explaining to him why you chose every single thing you chose in life. Every decision you made to do either the right thing or the wrong thing was done thoughtfully. Yisker lo yom hamisa, remember the day of death, says Rabbi Yitzchak Blazer, means study Mussar. Because when a person lives a life where you are so focused on everything you're doing, so that's the way that is what's gonna save you from sin. This is what Rabbi Yitzchak Blazer says. Rabbi Chaim Soloveitchik says, you're right. He argues back with Rabbi Yitzchak Blazer and he says, you are correct. This Gemara is telling a person that they are supposed to learn Mussar. You're 100% right. So he says, okay, so great. So then you should include it in the curriculum of Yeshivas Voloshin. But it says, Reb Chaim, there's another Gemara. There's a Gemara in Maseches Sukkah on Daf Nun Beis. Listen to this Gemara. The Gemara says the following. Tana debei Rabbi Yishmael. It was taught in the yeshiva of Rabbi Yishmael. Im paga bach menuvel zeh. That if the menuvel, what's the menuvel? The menuvel is they're translating as wretched, the disgusting one. Who's the disgusting one? So Rashi tells us, if you take a look right over here, Yetzer Hara. So the Yetzer Hara is pagabach. It comes and meets you, meaning he wants to pick a fight. So where do you go and fight? Mashcheu lebeis hamedrash. You bring him into the Beis Hamedrash. You go learn. End of Gemara. So basically, says Reb Chaim, that if a person has a regular learning regimen, if a person is commits themselves to learning in a normal way, and they learn halacha, and they learn Gemara, and they learn Mishnah, and they're part of a system of Talmud Torah, of daily Torah study, you don't need to learn Mussar. Because just having a regular Torah curriculum is going to save you from the Yetzer Hara. It's going to save you from making the wrong choice. So then why does the Gemara over here say that a person should learn Mussar? The Gemara in Brachos say that a person should learn Mussar. So why is the Gemara in Brachos say that a person is supposed to learn Mussar? So said Reb Chaim that he explained with a mashal, he explained with a parable. He said, we know that there are different medications that a person needs to take, whether it be that a person needs to take blood thinners, if the doctor is saying that that's a necessity for them because let's say they have potential for clot, or a person needs to has some sort of a digestive issue and the doctor prescribes a prescription strength laxative in order to help solve their problem. And there are a number of different medications that doctors prescribe in order to help a person with whatever either disease or virus or difficulty they're facing. Said Reb Chaim, what if a healthy person were to take those medicines? So what would happen? Number one, it wouldn't be to your benefit to taking those medicines. Number two, it could potentially harm you by taking those medicines. That if a healthy person starts taking high prescription strength laxative, that could really damage them in some way. That if a person uses a certain skin ointment that is prescription strength, that could potentially hurt them if they don't need it. You can think of 100 different examples. A person takes antibiotics when they don't need to take antibiotics, can destroy their immune system. There are, medications for people who have illnesses or people that are dealing with a certain ailment, but those medications are not for someone who is not dealing with those things. And if someone were to take those things, it could potentially harm them. It says Kafkaim, that's the difference between this Gemara and Sukkah Daf Nun Beis and the Gemara in Brachos. In Sukkah Daf Nun Beis, we're talking about a regular person. A regular person dealing with, regular, Yetzer Hara issues. Every person has a Yetzer Hara. It is the natural order of things. Every person is created with the good part of them and a negative part of them. And we try our whole lives to try and bring out the good part of ourselves in order to combat the negative part of ourselves. But every single person has both. Then there are some people that go through either for a period of time in their lives or people that are damaged throughout their entire life. But there are people that go through difficulties that create create a scenario where they are quote unquote spiritually sick. Their character is tainted for a certain period of time or during a certain episode in their life. In such a scenario, so then Yisker lo yom hamisa, that if you are so spiritually damaged that you can't even get back into regular Jewish life, you can't get back to regular learning, you can't get back, and even the Gemara says go learn, and if that works, great, but if you can't, but if the learning's not working, that means there's something else that's wrong here. I've never eaten non-kosher my entire life. Why am I going to eat non-kosher right now? Doesn't make any sense. So in such a scenario, yeah, you should learn Mussar. Such a person's got something wrong with them, and they have to learn Mussar. However, a person who is already committed, a person is doing everything the right way, why would they need to learn Mussar, says Rabbi? In fact, it may even damage you because it's going to cause you to number one, it's going to pull you away from Torah study you should be doing, and number two, it may, you may get into a philosophical trend where you're asking too many questions, and then it ends up you play games with your own mind, etc., etc. It actually could lead you down a bad road. But we know that there was a whole school of Mussar. So this is just one example of a number of different. I mean, I'll give you another example. In the Telz Yeshiva, in the late 19th century, Rav Eliezer Gordon, who was the Rosh Yeshiva at the time, hired Rabbi Leib Chasman to teach Mussar in the yeshiva, and it was a huge tumult. It was all over the Yiddish papers that the Telz Yeshiva, jumped onto the bandwagon of the Mussar movement, and basically it was because you have these huge Torah giants. You have your Rabbi Saul Salanter and Rabbi Yitzchak Blazer against the Volozhin Yeshiva. The Volozhin Yeshiva, they didn't have a Mussar Seder, so it's a hard thing to step into the middle of. And each one had very good reason why, either for or against. Now, another important thing to keep in mind: the original purpose of the Mussar movement was actually not for the yeshiva system. Originally, Rabbi Sol Salanter wanted the focus to be on communities, that working people study Mussar, and he felt because people that are outside of the yeshiva system are not they don't have the advantage of always being engrossed with Torah, being in an environment that is conducive for self-growth, for Torah learning, etc. And therefore, he felt that for general communities, Mussar is a necessity. Like we spoke about last time, today this whole thing is settled and it doesn't really apply anymore. And in fact, it even comes up in the Mishnah Brew. The Mishnah Brew Hoskins, he gives a psak halacha. Right in the beginning of the Mishnah Brew, he says, "V'tzarcha adam likvoa lo es lilmod sifrei Mussar b'chol yom v'yom," that a person should take time every single day to study a little bit of Mussar. Im ma'at v'im harbe, this are a little bit of Mussar, a lot of Mussar. Ki agadol mechaver yitzro gadol himeno, because the greater a person is, then the greater yitzer they have, the greater inclination they have to do something negative. Not to get into exactly why that is right now, but regardless, says the Mishnah Brew that a person should learn Mussar every single day. And we said last time, because when Rabbi Yerucham when Rabbi Levovitz of the Mir Yeshiva, when Rabbi Yerucham came to the Mir Yeshiva, he restructured the whole Mussar movement, that it was no longer these extremes. That was the concern of Rabbi Chaim that it could potentially damage a person from taking the Mussar medicine. That it was calmed down so much that it didn't matter. It became kind of like taking vitamins, where it was just it was light. It's a boost. It's helpful, not necessarily a necessity. Very helpful, and it really defined the difference between a person who was able to actually take time to work on their character development. Those are the people that really became greats. Rabbi Soloveitchik, though, and this is the way Rabbi Schechter is, and what I've learned from Rabbi Schechter is that the study of Mussar does not need to be its own set structure. A person just needs to take to heart everything that they learn. Like, for example, the way that, when Rav Schechter teaches Torah, you hear in his voice where he's basically saying, the will of God is to do X, Y, and Z. The will of God, or the way that I think Hashem would want us to observe this mitzvah is as follows. It is always put in the perspective of we actually are, entering into the Holy of Holies when we learn Torah. We actually are engaging with God. Therefore, the formalized study of Mussar is not an absolute necessity, because you can develop into a better person simply through Torah study itself. But it takes a very unique type of a person that through halacha, through Gemara, you can find the Mussar, you can find the character development, the points of tension within yourself that one is supposed to work on. That's a very, very unique type of a person. Like better is like Revolbi style or Yerucham Levovitz style, basically taking a few minutes every day to stop and do some introspection and try and grow a little bit. That's the appropriate approach to Mussar today. That's the approach we have today in the yeshivas and even outside the yeshivas. There is an amazing book. It's actually first it was printed as a 5-volume set called Tenuas HaMussar, the dispute over Mussar, the battle over Mussar, the Mussar controversy. It was written by Rabbi Dov Katz, where he actually records this entire piece of history with all of its details, with all of the yeshivas that were in favor of Mussar, all the yeshivas that were against Mussar, the influential people that were for it, against it, why they were for it, why they were against it. And then after it was all said and done, he then wrote a follow-up book. It's right over here. This is the cover page. The Sharblat is over here, called Pulmos HaMussar, which is, again, it's part of the Mussar saga. Me'es Harav Dov Katz. Rabbi Dov Katz wrote this work, and I just want to read to you the first paragraph of this, the epilogue to the Tenuas HaMussar, where he writes as kind of an appendix or an epilogue. He writes over here. He says, Kol rayon chadash, any new revolutionary idea, shetzatz b'Yisrael, that is rooted in the Jewish people, meaning every revolution, every movement that took place throughout our history, bekol tekufos toldosav, throughout all of Jewish history, whether it be the Rambam, who was revolutionary in the way that halacha is supposed to be studied, whether it be the Mussar movement, Hasidus, Yeshiva University, these major movements throughout our history have always been met with Orer v'Yechocham Charifim Umelchamos Deos, that it always, we fight it. We as a people fight against these revolutionary ideas. It's part of our nature that we know the Torah refers to us as an Am Keshe Oref. We fight things. We're not people that are just going to sit back and say, oh, great idea, run with it. We need to, test it and test it in the mighty waters of the Jewish people's think tank. So says Rav Dov Katz, he says that af hashitos hayesodos shebiyados, even things that are steeped in Torah Judaism, kagon hachakira, hakabbalah, v'chasidus, learning Kabbalah, learning Hasidus, even Reb Chaim Soloveitchik's revolutionary concept of chakira, the way to go about Talmudic analysis. All of this was not just accepted; it was something that was challenged. Says Rav Dov Katz, though, something incredible. He says that a movement in Klal Yisrael that is challenged, that is still practiced, if at one point in history it was challenged and it has been accepted, that is how you know it is something that is within our Masorah. Meaning the litmus test to know whether or not this is something that has potential to be a part of our great tradition is whether or not people put up a stink about it, whether or not Jews fight against it. He says, Zeh simin yafela. This is a good thing. It's a good sign. Liyadus. That he says, because he says, Lebal yispazru litocha al matim zarim ushalo tista klum mikarosa umat harasa. He says, because lest this idea does not go through its proper channels of checks and balances, making sure that it checks out in our Jewish tradition. And he says that that's exactly what happened with Mussar. That Besnagus Kazu Nifkisha Gam Tnuas HaMussar Imreshis, that when the Mussar movement was starting out, that's exactly what happened. It was the litmus test to see whether or not this was going to end up being accepted in Klal Yisrael. And we know that history has shown that, of course, it was accepted. I want to point out also, the Kafkaim. The Kafkaim is right over here. The Kafkaim, written by Rabbeinu Yaakov Chaim Sofer, who was a early 20th century Sephardic Chacham, who wrote a commentary on the Shulchan Aruch. So he has, it was published before the Mishnah Berurah, but in a very similar style, bringing down a number of different opinions, explaining the Shulchan Aruch and the like. So what the Kafkaim brings down in the laws of Birchas HaTorah on making blessings upon Torah, he says that when one is studying Mussar Sfarim, one could have envisioned that, especially if you assume that one should not even spend their time studying Mussar, that studying the Mesilas Yesharim, it's kind of like a nice summertime read, but it is not learning Torah, which is, I guess, what Reb Chaim Soloveitchik would suggest. And if that's the case, so then one shouldn't make the blessing upon Torah on learning Mesilas Yesharim, for example. However, says the Kafkaim that a person certainly should make a Birchas HaTorah. They certainly should make a blessing upon the Torah when learning Mussar Sfarim. Again, I like to use the example like Rabbi Yisrael Salanter said, that if a person studies Mussar for 5 minutes a day, because that's the only time they have allotted to Torah study. In turn, the person is going to end up realizing that they actually have a lot more than 5 minutes a day to study Torah. Mussar is obviously something critical, but as long as it's being done in the right way, with the right frame of mind, with the right direction, without taking it to too much of an extreme. And what that could develop if a person really sticks with it and they have a set short amount of time a day that they allot towards this kind of character development, it goes such a long way. Goes such a long way. You don't need to do anything extreme. It's literally taking 5 minutes a day and just sitting and contemplating. What is something I need to work on? What is, where is some place that our rabbis speak about this? And I'll stop and contemplate that one teaching for the next week for 5 minutes a day. And it's doing exercises like that that really can change a person. I mean, I know, for example, I've, sent people to go meet with Reb Shmuel Kamenetsky, Zatzal, who was Reb David Feinstein's best friend. They were colleagues, but more importantly, they were friends, and they were both Gedolei Yisrael. And Reb Shmuel Kamenetsky, Yibarel L'chaim Tovim Aruchim, is still, should live and be well, one of the Gedolei Yisrael. And when you send people to go, when I would call up Reb Shmuel Kamenetsky to ask a shaila, and he'd answer the phone and he'd say, I only have about 20 minutes because Mussar Seder in the yeshiva is starting in 20 minutes. The man is in his 90s. He really needs to still study Mussar. He really needs to take 5 minutes of his day, 10 minutes of his day, 15 minutes of his day to work on his character development. Because when you that is what could develop into greatness. The greatness can be developed through a person really taking time to contemplate who they are, what their actions, what the implications of their actions could be, and the like. That really could define a person. And Reb Shmuel Kamenetsky says that is what made Reb David Feinstein so unique. I want to just play for you. This is the Hesped that Rabbi Jeff mentioned in his class Monday night. I want to just play it for you because it is so important to hear this Hesped that Reb Shmuel Kamenetsky gave to his closest friend, Reb David Feinstein, at his Levaya, talking about how this could be the end result. That the end result of a person spending their whole life working on themselves and having character development could be a person like Reb David Feinstein. Listen to this.
I see that I'm up here. I hear better than the bottom. So I don't know if you hear or you don't hear. So please excuse me.
That I just stopping that. If that was all I wanted to show you, that would have been enough. Did you hear what he just said? He was standing in down below, meaning in the pit, below the stage, when he was listening to the other Hespedim. And he said that when he got up to the top of the stage just now and started talking, he realized that it's much easier to hear from on top of the stage than from down below. So he apologizes if he's going to be wasting anyone's time because they're not going to be able to hear him well from down below. Please accept my apology. Like, that level of sensitivity is something that's incredible. Incredible. It's because it's a lifetime dedicated towards character development.
I don't know how much I can add, but I can just say that der Niftere gewesen, a Ausnahme von einem Mensch. An Ausnahme means particular, special, that is very hard to describe. Because a human being has many facets, and he was Chulei Toiv, Chulei Geschmack. With whoever he came in contact, he was a chaver, a chaver, a yedid, a good friend. There are no words to describe his personality, because he was a mim b'fnei atzmai. Amin b'fnei Asmai means that he was completely himself. He was a person that he understood everybody. He understood everybody what they want. And he was always willing to give, to add whatever you need. If I can help you, I'm ready to help you. That was his metzius.
You know, that doesn't happen in a vacuum. That a person can become like that. That even though they are the Gadol Hador, even though they literally are the highest profile person in all of Torah Judaism in the United States, still, if I were to walk over to him and say, I really need your help. Can you just, watch my car while I double park for a minute just to run into a grocery store to grab? He would have sat by my car. Like, we're talking about the Gadol Hador, someone no one in all of the United States knew more Torah than Rav David Feinstein, and yet his character is so pristine, like the way Reb Shmuel said it, that he was just so caring about another individual. He was just a chaver. He was just a friend. But that doesn't happen in a vacuum. It happens through years and years and years of dedicated self-development and character development. And I think that this is really what is unique about the Jewish people. What's unique about the Jewish people is that, we don't need to go to a library and look for the self-help section. We don't need to go to the self-help book section in Barnes & Noble and figure out a way to become a better person using those kinds of books. We don't. Why? Because we have tradition that teaches us how to develop as better people. In fact, it comes straight from Har Sinai. It's exactly what the Bar Tanura says right over here, that the Bar Tanura points out in the beginning of Pirkei Avos. He says, why is it that Pirkei Avos begins with Moshe Kibul Torah Sinai, that the Torah was received at Har Sinai? Pirkei Avos is a book of ethical teachings. Why? If I wanted to know that the Torah was given from Har Sinai, I should have learned that right when I started all of the Mishnahs, right when I'm learning, right at the beginning of my Torah studies, not when I'm starting to learn ethics. What is Torah being given? 613 mitzvos. What does that have anything to do with being a good person? So says the Bar Tanura exactly this. He says, Hischil hatana b'mesechta zu, that the Tana began this mesechta with Moshe Kibul Torah Sinai, lomer lecha, to teach me that shehamidos v'hamusarim shebezu, that they came straight from, they was not lo badu osam chachmei hamishna belibam. These were not created by our sages, the proper conduct. Ela af elu nemer misinai. This came straight from God. This is part of our tradition of how to develop into a proper person. It's something that was made revolutionary by Rabbi Saul Salanter, and something that has stood the test of time, something that we recognize that needs to be something systematic, that we work on bringing out those proper character traits through the study of Torah, through exercises in character development. And you can become a person like Rav David Feinstein. I want to just close. I sent out earlier on the WhatsApp, so I apologize if you already saw this, and it's going to be just a repeat for you, but I think it is worth repeating. I myself have watched this already probably a dozen times because of how important it is. This is Rabbi Sachs speaking at a Olami conference where he's speaking to a whole bunch of college students across the United States. I think it's actually from all over the world. And he is speaking at this conference, and he is using it as an opportunity to explain, why each one of them has such potential. Listen to what he has to say.
I want to quote you a line from Shakespeare that I found life-changing. It comes from Twelfth Night, and it goes to the very heart of what it is to be a Jew. He says, some are born great, some achieve greatness, but some have greatness thrust upon them. I realized at a pretty early age, I wasn't born great, and I wasn't going to achieve greatness.
He was wrong about that one.
But at a certain point in my life at university, I suddenly realized that if you're a Jew, you have greatness thrust upon you. How so?
He doesn't need me to say it, but he's 100% right. That we as the Jewish people have greatness thrust upon us. It is part of our Mussar, as the Bartanur said, comes straight from our Sinai, how to achieve greatness. It's incumbent upon us, though, to take time to contemplate, how can I become greater? How can I develop greatness? How could I bring the greatness that has been thrust upon me out? That comes, said Rabbi Shaul Salanter, through the study of Mussar. Rabbi Chaim Soloveitchik said it comes through basic learning Torah. We know, based on our Mussar from Rabbi Rucham Levovitz, that it comes from just stopping and thinking. Just contemplate. Stop and take note of who you are. Check yourself. And through that, you certainly can achieve greatness. You can become a person that, even though you are the Gadol Hador, something like that will not get to your head. And you can still be a person that will just be looking to help you. I'm just looking to help. I'm just trying to be a chaver. I'm trying to be a good friend. We should learn from these two great Gedolim of Rav David Feinstein and Rabbi Sachs, Zichronim Livracha, and apply their amazing character and their message to our lives, in order so that we too can take out the greatness that has been thrust upon us out, and through our own personal introspective study of Mussar, so that we don't just know how to behave, but we know the right way to behave and actually do behave the right way. We will achieve greatness in Mirz Hashem. So I want to thank everyone for joining us for this final installment of the Great Deeds of the Mussar movement. Happy to stay on for a few minutes if anyone has any questions. Next week, there is not going to be class next week.